No.
Okay. And there's still someone waiting in the lobby, Connor.
Yep. Yeah. That was a new one.
Okay.
I
So,
think that's rolling in.
are all the select board members ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So, thank you all for attending via conferencing the June 22nd, 2020 select board meeting.
Is now joining.
And many people are going to continue to join throughout the beginning part of the meeting. Unfortunately, it's going to announce them each time. I'll apologize for that, but it's just the state we're in and having to run virtual meetings. So a couple things. I'm to read the emergency provisions of this meeting, so I will do that very quickly. As chairperson,
Is now exiting.
as chair of the Barrington Select Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note there is no physical location to observe, and you may listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's order. We are providing public access to the meeting by telephone. Sorry, I lost you guys for a second. We are providing public access by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. By phone participation, if you're having any trouble with video access and you'd like to just listen, you can dial 1-603-664-0240 and enter conference ID 135-401-941, then hit the hashtag. Video participation link is at bit.ly/capital BARR, capital SB 200622. Any troubles that you happen to have as you are trying to enter this meeting, you can certainly contact administration at barrington.newhampshire.gov. We would adjourn the meeting if the public was not able to attend successfully. Please note that during this meeting, attendance and all votes will be taken by roll call vote alphabetically and end with the chairperson. We will begin the meeting by taking roll call attendance of the select board.
Yeah, present. There's no one with me. This is my vote.
George Bailey, nobody is with me in this room. I have a accompaniment downstairs.
Andrew Knapp, present.
James Sakosha, present.
Tracy Hardikoff at 48 Stone Farm Road, present with a large Bernese Mountain Dog and a husband in the building, but not in the room. Could I ask you all to mute your phones so they don't ring in the background? And join me, please, in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Yeah, I gotta work on my beach body.
So, couple quick things. Happy birthday to select person, our Vice Chair, Andy Knapp, today. I know you are thrilled to be spending your birthday in this meeting.
Hey, Andy.
And I wanted to
Happy
make
birthday, Andy.
wanted to make a quick shout out announcement to a young woman. I'm gonna pronounce her name hopefully correctly, Shannon Folds or Folds. She lives in Barrington with her parents, Margaret and Jason, and she was one of the top 10 graduates from the Oyster River High School during this month of June. And I thought it was important that we recognize that we had a scholar from Barrington in the top 10. So congratulations to this young lady. Yes, it appears that she's heading on and has plans to attend the University of Michigan. And she's working on a pre-med and movement science track. So that should be interesting. Thank you all for indulging me in that. So we have up first, appointments with public comments. Public comments are limited to 15 minutes in total for each of the 2 petitioned articles coming before us. I will ask that we not have what's considered repetitive speech, that we not engage in back and forth questions with the board, but that the 2 petitioners present their information to us. And at the end of that, there will be some type of quick discussion with the board, and any decisions made at that time will be public. So first group presenting is the petition on home gun ranges, noise, the environment, and safety. Do we have those attendees? And if you would like to participate in the public comment section, please either you can raise your hand by mousing over the screen. You'll see there's a raise your hand. Or if you would like to email a quick email to the administration at barrington.newhampshire.gov, or in your upper left-hand side, so I don't miss anyone, there's a quick chat button as well for virtual meetings. So if you would like to use that, you're welcome to use that as well. Understand that the town administrator has many people logging in and waiting in the lobby, and he's managing many things. So be patient with us with this virtual platform. And I as well will do our 3 minutes with the stopwatch for each person. Understand also that should you choose to, you can defer your time to another person that represents your perspective. So who do we have, Connor?
So the only person that,
I'm sorry, select person air, go ahead.
I'm downloading an app. I have no picture or anything, but I still
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay, as long as you can participate and hear us. Go ahead, Connor.
I was just going to say the only chat that came in was a question on a different topic. So there'll be another public comment period at the end, and it looks like Andy chimed in to try to help out. So I think we only have the original petitioners interested in speaking on behalf of that petition.
Okay, very good. That would be, I think Matt Town has the whole group of them together. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Can we pin him so people can see him?
Yep, everybody can control that on their own. Once he starts talking, it'll make sure his video tile is shown. And then if folks would like to pin that video tile, make that the only one they see, they can.
Okay, very good.
And I have a message from Matt Town that says Matt, Jack, and David will all speak. Matt will follow up at the end.
Okay,
So
and I have a raised hand as well from a Paul M-A-U at Masteller?
Mosteller. Yep.
Okay.
That question was addressed in the comments from Andy. So
Okay,
I
so
think
we're all set, so we can proceed with Matt's group?
yes.
Okay.
So Mr. Town, if you're participating on your computer, you can click the microphone icon to unmute yourself, or you can, if you're participating on the phone, you can press *6 to unmute yourself from the phone.
Am I
Oh,
audible?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you now, Matt. Go ahead.
Okay, very good. Good evening, people, Barrington and Select Board. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board as well as the rest of the township on this important issue. We have changed the nature of our presentation tonight since the one we had made and submitted last week as requested. Simply had more information that could be presented in a 15-minute block. So when the select board is able to find the time, we would like to present the entire issue in a three-dimensional way. So what we're doing today is just presenting the bullet points, but there is far more information. You all have a manual with all of our documents, the EPA documents, the map, all that you have. So with that said, I will turn this over to David Ayer, who will speak about the noise issue.
Hi guys, I appreciate your time tonight to voice our concerns. My name is David Ayer. I live at 279 Mary Hill Road. Been a resident of Barrington for 5 years and have maintained my business in town for over 15 years, and I have over 60 employees. This initiative was started because repetitive loud gun noise near Jack and Pam Bingham's in my residence. We asked Matt Town, our legislator, for help. It's not about Second Amendment rights. This is fully disclosed in the petition. Keep all your guns you want. I have 10, and I've also received my hunter safety certificate from Major Waldron's. This is about responsible gun behavior and the rights of others to enjoy the land like you have the right to enjoy yours. 12 to 15 guys shooting at 10 at night in the backyard from a porch is not responsible behavior. Repeated calls to the police on this and like behavior are documented by Chief Joy. These are public records. Most events do not get called in, greater than 25 in the past year. Shooting at lampposts and buildings are among others. Our thanks to Chief Joy and his staff for obtaining this information. Other concerns are parents won't let their kids out to play when gunfire is all around them. Many homeowners also have pets that are traumatized by the shooting. This would not be an issue with small bore target shooting. We have an ever-growing large bore semi-automatic weapons fire. The situation is out of control. And I want to say that, in the town of Barrington, you need a permit to get a campfire at your house, but you don't need anything to operate a shooting range in your backyard. It's crazy. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Jack Bingham.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for listening to this. My name is Jack Bingham. My wife and I live at 226 Mary Hill Road. We've lived in Barrington for over 30 years. It's well known that lead is a persistent environmental toxin. It's linked to deficiencies in intellect, kidney disease, and defects in reproductive processes. Lead will bioconcentrate into fish, birds, and wildlife. It then works its way into us and our children. We are aware that there are places in town that have been tested for lead and show high concentrations. At least one has been remediated in order to sell. Barrington is a source of water for multiple towns. DES has indicated that the problem is occurring all over the state, not just here. Few, if any, backyard ranges have any method of collecting spent lead. All this will leak into the land and potentially groundwater. There are no requirements to have a properly organized, structured home gun range. One outside range in Barrington has been in operation for nearly 100 years and is 550 feet from a brook. 50 people shooting 80 rounds per day for a year will deposit 100,000 pounds of lead. Northampton had exactly this issue in their marshlands and were issued a cease and desist order from the state because the range sat over an aquifer that feeds 3 towns and had high levels of lead. Basically, we have numerous developing toxic lead deposits around town masquerading as home firing ranges. We must deal with this now. This is not a Second Amendment issue. And I'll turn this over to Matt for the balance.
And I'm back. So my message is just to add on to that. I counted 56 water bodies within the town limits of Barrington. So the issue there, the takeaway there is that we have a very high water table. So no matter where we shoot, it's going to be over or nearby water. In discussions with the state board in this matter, they have strict regulations about wetlands, and that's the situation they will get heavily involved with. So I also want to talk a little bit about safety in regards to the SELT and the conservation trailhead. I will walk 4 to 6 miles every day, and I often find myself on these trails. It's a little disconcerting. In fact, it's a lot disconcerting to think that when I hear gunfire, the people shooting those guns don't know where their lead is landing. So considering that Barrington is blessed with many conservation trails, and these are all heavily used, there's a tremendous exposure there. So hunting is allowed on most of the trails. But it's important to note that hunting is very different than target practicing. Hunters shoot 1 or 2 bullets. Target practice may shoot hundreds. So there's a very different order of scale here. So hunting is not the issue. And hunting season has defined beginning, middle, and end. And so we can stay out of the woods during those times. We can wear blaze orange. That's not the case with target practicing, which can occur all times of the year. So that is a very real exposure. And we know for our anecdotal, credible anecdotal evidence that people are in fact shooting into the salt land. They may not realize that they're there. It doesn't mean it's any less harmful. So again, you were provided all of our data. So we talked about noise issue. We talked about the environmental issues, which are pervasive and will always be with us if we don't deal with it now. Neighboring towns have had that same issue and are still trying to remediate that. I had extensive discussions with the interim town manager for Northampton, and he said it's a thorn in their side every meeting. So what we propose to get us off this current state, first is to reiterate, this is not a Second Amendment issue. Anybody can have any guns they want. We're not caring about that. What we care about is responsible gun ownership, respecting everybody's right to enjoy their land equally. So we ask the select board to take a leadership role. And by that, I mean to convene a committee of 6 plus a facilitator. Who that facilitator is matters not to us. Tracy had mentioned that she had connections with possible facilitators. I'm certainly willing and able to do it, or we can hire somebody else. It doesn't matter. The point is to have 3 gun owners and 3 non-gun owners take a look at this issue and come up with recommendations that work for everybody. So this committee would research and determine best practices, much of which has already been determined. The state has guidance, and the EPA document that you have a copy of, nearly 100 pages, is very good. It's very detailed on how to build a proper gun range so that the lead can be harvested, the rain will be kept away from the lead, and individuals will know where their shot lands. So that committee would make recommendations to the select board, hold a public hearing on these recommendations, and construct a warrant article for the deliberative session. And then finally, of course, to vote for this in the town meeting in March of 2021. So this is a non-violent, constructive way of handling the democratic process. We must deal with this lead issue. We must deal with this noise issue. The stories we are hearing from 110 people who signed our petition are just heart-wrenching, of animals having to be put down because they could not handle the constant gunfire. I also want to make a mention about our petition. It's well noted where our information comes from, but I also want to note that all 110 of the people in our petition are from Barrington. It was required as part of our petition to leave a Barrington address. So these are legitimate Barrington residents. I might make note that the opposing petition does not have that restriction. So it really can be from anywhere in the state. So what I would suggest is that they get asked that question. This is a very big issue for among our townsfolk. And everybody we talk to and people who send us these long letters expressing their concern have told us they repeatedly asked for something to be done. So if this should come down to it, we do certainly have plenty of signatures to establish our own petition warrant article. We would like not to go that route. If necessary, we'll go that route. But we prefer the select board to appoint this committee of 2 groups of people and have them have those productive discussions and come up with a reasonable alternative to what we're doing now. What we're doing now does not work. I thank you for your time and attention, and I guess we can be open for questions as you see fit. Outside of that, we're done.
Tracy, you need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Thank you to our first group of presenters. I know back in April during a meeting, I had asked that any group that would like the select board's involvement in issues bring petitioned warrant articles before the board so that the board could do their due diligence, which requires us to be sure that any petitioned warrant article that comes before the town voters is in fact a legal petition. And so I absolutely appreciate that the group of petitioners got together and did bring the issue before us. I know we have another group presenting. I will ask, just based on the information that was provided, that when the next petition is presented, you do speak to the issue of whether signatures are Barrington residents or not. That will become in the future, as we review the legality of each petitioned article, that will become important. So who is it that would like to present for, I'm sorry?
I need to make a statement.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I had technical problems with my computer. I had to log back in, so I missed the beginning. But I wanted to make it transparent that David Ayer is my cousin.
Okay.
Blood relative.
Very good. Thank you. I'm assuming, Dan, that you don't have a financially beneficial relationship with the presenter.
No.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I appreciate your transparency. Counter petitioners, can someone share with me who's leading up the counter petition?
That would be me, Donald Coker.
Okay, Donald, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna find your online profile and pin you just so we can see you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Select Person Bailey.
I would ask that somebody please check their computer/telephone. And if you have both of them on, would you please turn one of them off? There's a terrible echo on my end. I can still understand what's being said. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Our last petitioners took just 11 minutes or so, so I'm resetting this. You certainly, Dawn, if there are no other petitioners that are presenting or would like to present, you can certainly take up to, I think the 15 minutes is what we decided. Is anyone else wanting to speak in reference to either petition? If you are, please, there's a little raise your hand. You just mouse over it and click on it, and it will alert our town administrator that you would like to speak. Otherwise, thank you all for humoring us on these video meetings. Go ahead, Don.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Donald Coker, and I am a member of the Board of Directors of Major Waldron's, and I've been asked to speak to the Select Board on their behalf. Major Waldron's is a nonprofit established in 1931, and our property is on Route 9 in Barrington. Our activities include outdoor ranges, both rifle and pistol, shotgun range, both skeet, trap, and also 5-stand, indoor ranges, and a member meeting house. And we host many educational programs, including first aid, firearms safety and training, hunter education, 4-H, and Boy Scout Venture Crew. We do roadside cleanups. We hold community fundraisers, including food pantry donations, and we hold competitions in the shooting sports. We are also an active tree farm, and we have over 1,100 law-abiding, hardworking members, many of which are Barrington residents. So why am I here? I am here to represent the 1,100 members of Major Waldron's and the almost 2,000 signers of the petition. Now, a question was raised about Barrington residents. Not only Barrington residents use the Southeast Land Trust land. Our petition specifically referred to the users of Southeast Land Trust, so they may or may not be Barrington residents, but for the purposes of this petition, that is an irrelevant fact. The previously submitted petition is really so wrong on so many levels and truly is a thinly veiled attempt at restricting the legal and protected activities of property owners who enjoy the shooting sports and others who use the Southeast Land Trust lands as they were intended to be used in Barrington. So why do we say that? Let me provide you with facts. Representative Town's activist anti-gun efforts in Concord are well known. He enthusiastically supported and voted for a number of bills in 2019, all of which incidentally were vetoed by Governor Sununu. In addition to his support of many anti-gun bills at the state level, he was quoted in the Barrington Town News, and this is an online community news source, on September 19th, 2019, as saying that Barrington voters should continue to keep bugging their elected officials about gun control issues because it's a tragedy that we have a mass shooting in America nearly every day now, despite the fact that there never has been a mass shooting in New Hampshire. On the Citizens Count website, Representative Town is quoted as saying, in part, "I strongly support stricter gun laws." I asked Chief Joy about the recorded gunfire complaints. I wanted to do my homework, and I did. And thank you, Chief Joy, for all of your assistance in this. Unfortunately, he was unable to supply me with specific count of gunfire complaints, not because of any other reason except the dispatcher may or may not have logged it in as gunfire versus a noise complaint, which, by the way, Chief Joy indicated that will be rectified. However, he was kind enough to go through the database and print out all of the noise complaints regardless of type. There were 30 pages of noise complaints over the last year, and I looked at each and every one of them. And it was interesting. Some, I will stipulate, some were valid calls about gunfire on adjoining property. Not a question. The police responded and in many cases did not find anyone shooting. In other cases, it was fireworks. In some cases, the police simply talked with the shooter and the gunfire stopped. And I think I need to point out something which is extremely important in this, is that a number of those complaints were complaining about a single address on Mary Hill Road. The Southeast Land Trust land was purchased with a proviso that it be used for hunting and other hunting-related purposes. I spoke with the executive director, and he stated flatly they have never had a complaint from the users of the land concerning any concerns for safety. Likewise, I spoke with a former board member that was instrumental in the acquisition of the land, and he stated the same thing, and reminded me that hunting and related uses were part of the conditions of acquiring that land. In our opinion, New Hampshire state law and the Barrington Police Department are more than adequate for these kinds of incidents. For instance, one, by state law, cannot discharge a firearm within 100 yards of a building. That law has been effective for many, many years. We feel that current regulations concerning the use of firearms in the town strike the right balance between public safety and property rights. Current state law and civil liability already provide deterrents for the unlawful, irresponsible, or otherwise dangerous use of firearms anywhere in the state. As for the petition submitted by Representative Town, there are so many falsehoods and misrepresentations that it would take probably this entire evening to refute them all. Suffice to say, their petition is not about noise, as it only addresses one type of noise, and then show their true colors by trying to come up with other reasons to restrict legal firearms use. We feel the fact that their petition, which has been active since the end of May and has been signed by only slightly over 100 people, compared to our petition, which just went live on June 12th and has been signed by over almost 2,000 people. I think it was 1,993 at last check. It speaks volumes about what the citizens of Barrington and the users of the Southeast Land Trust feel about this issue. So we respectfully request that the Select Board of Barrington grant our request and reaffirm current regulations and the primacy of state law. And in conclusion, given Representative Towns' history of anti-gun activism in Concord and his public anti-gun statements, we see his petition as nothing more than a solution looking for a problem. And we urge the Select Board to reject it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Don. Anyone else in our public portion of the public comment that would like to speak? We have about 6 additional minutes if you'd like to speak on behalf of the counter petition.
I had a request from Paul Mosteller, who submitted a number of written comments and asked that they be read.
Okay.
So I will do that at this
Yep.
time.
Reset in case they take more than 3 minutes. Go ahead, Connor.
Okay. How many homes in Barrington are older than 1978? They contain lead. Do we remove homes older than 1978? How do determine what is fireworks or gunshots? Lead bullets in Barrington has been around since 1850s. Barrington's history was started because of iron ore Samuel Shute. Half hour on Scruton Pond, not near David Ayres or Saltland. How about barking dogs stepping in their business on hiking trails? Some of the petitioners were conservation committee and involved in SELT development, so now changing their ideas. And then where can I sign?
Okay.
And I don't have any other hands raised or comments requested to be read. Sure. I just saw a hand raised from our police chief, George Joy.
Okay, go ahead. Chief Joy? He might be muted.
Yep, he's taking.
Am I audible now?
Okay, yes, sir. Go ahead.
I chose now to jump in because I wanted to make sure that in the light of transparency, the same information was transmitted to both sides of the petition. When Mr. Coker said 30 pages, 29, 30 pages, he's correct. That should reflect 1 call per page. So both sides of this got the exact same information from me, sent the same way. I believe the email worded identical. So just for transparency, for the town's sake and for the board's sake, I wanted to let everybody know that.
Very good. Thank you, Chief Joy. Any other public comments at this time?
I see none coming through.
Madam Chair, may I conclude with one comment, please?
Yes, you can. You have exactly 1.5 minutes.
I can do it. Thank you. There's been a lot of talk about lead. I think as a practical matter, people that shoot in their backyards do not shoot enough lead to make a hill of beans difference in the big picture. And I would like to point out that Major Waldron is currently discussing with different environmental groups that recycle lead, how we can recycle all of our lead. We are a steward of the land and we pay great attention. Just a very short description. What can be done is basically you take about the top 4 inches of topsoil off the shotgun range, you sift it, you save the lead, you recycle the lead, you put the dirt back, you reseed it, and you do that about every 5 years. In the meantime, you lime the fields to make sure that nothing's breaking down. We are very, very cognizant of water. And the difference is Northampton never did anything. They just shot right into a wetland for years and years and years. So the lead issue is really kind of a straw man. So that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, presenters of both petitioned warrant articles. I'm going to go back to the select board at this time. I am of the mindset, usually I ask, are there any comments, issues, concerns? I'm of the mindset that given that there is quite a lot of depth to statute or RSA 159 at the state level, that we take both of these and run them by our legal department and get any type of response as to the legality of what a municipality can do to proceed with either one of the petitioned warrant articles. But I am one of 5 How does the rest of the board feel about that course of action?
I'd concur with that statement.
Okay, thank you, Select Person Sakosha.
I would agree that there is no action to be taken besides allowing legal to review it.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Knapp.
My comments also to be the same, is that we should go along with legal.
Okay, thank you. And Select Person Air?
Legal.
Okay, thank you to the petitioners for allowing us the opportunity to bring these before the legal department. It becomes very important. On a side note, while I absolutely appreciate our free democracy and our process as an SB2 community, last year there were a number of what I termed moral imperative petitioned warrant articles that came before us. It did cost an additional $1,600 to print additional pages to our warrant and bring that before the voters. And it did cost a significant amount of time to prep letters and gather addresses and mail out responses to those as the petitions requested. So please be ever mindful when we're bringing forward information that we will always do our best to make sure that voices in our town are heard and that we handle any petitioned information through legal methods first so that we could get the right warrant article language out to the voters. I appreciate everyone and their research and their comments and times tonight. Thank you. Review of meeting minutes from June 8th of 2020. Were there any needs for changes?
Move to approve.
Oh,
Second.
okay. And a second?
Third.
Roll call vote beginning with Select Person Air, please.
Air, aye.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Sakosha, aye.
And Hardikoff, aye. Thank you all for reviewing those before the meeting. Staff report, please, by our Town Administrator MacGyver.
Yes, thank you. So only one quick item. Everything else is an agenda item throughout the meeting. Just a reminder to the community and to the board that the Transfer Station and Recycling Center will be closed on Saturday, which is July 4th, in observance of Independence Day. The board voted to make sure that the transfer station was open for a full day on Thursday, that Thursday before, on July 2nd. And a good opportunity to remind residents of the community. We encourage you to use the facility on the off hours, which are generally Tuesday and Thursday, but especially Thursday, to keep congestion under control. We've been glad to continue our recycling program. A lot of communities have had to stop that due to social distancing and constraints of their facility. We've been glad to offer most of the services at the transfer station that we would under normal conditions, and really appreciate the community's support in social distancing and staying healthy. So transfer station is closed on July 4th. That's all I have, and I'm happy to turn it over to Municipal Office Administrator Caudle.
Thank you, Connor. Just a couple things. AP Manifest 2020-50 and 3 replacement deeds for properties purchased in 1982 and 1992 from the town that were not recorded. That's it.
Very good. Thank you. Next up on the agenda under old business is the 6-wheel dump truck and a ground speed controlled spreader. Do we have Mark on here?
We do. Mark, star 6 to unmute yourself on the phone. Oh, he's there. Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. At the last meeting, several of you inquired about feasibility and cost of basically computerized automation for the sander salt spreader on the new cabin chassis that is being ordered. Unfortunately, the unit that I had originally looked at when Connor went to press with his agenda for the next meeting, I did some research beyond that point and actually came up with something cheaper and better. The Cirrus unit, which I originally was told about by Viking, who is the outfit that is doing the upfitting on that cab and chassis. The unit, it is a computerized unit. Basically, as the truck slows down or speeds up, the delivery rate per mile stays the same. If the truck comes to a stop, the sander comes to a stop. All good things. But the problem that I found out about after talking with the city of Somersworth, who has been a wealth of knowledge and cooperation to me through this whole process. They had some serious units that they had some issues with, and they ended up swapping them out for a Muncie unit. Some of the problems with the serious units were the parts were very non-generic. You couldn't just get them anywhere. And the setup just to basically set the trim on all of the parameters on this, it required proprietary software, which you had to pay somebody to come out and do. So it was kind of a booby trap in a way. So the city of Somersworth basically has switched to all Muncie units. They're less money than the Sirius units, and all the parts are generic. They're available off the shelf at any average hydraulic shop, and the setup is all done by the user. There is no outside setup, no outside fee involved. The end user does it all. As far as should we get this or shouldn't we? I mean, we can still sand the road the old-fashioned way, but with DES MS4 coming down the road at us, I think we need to get some legs under us as far as starting to at least look like we're trying to comply with basically trying to track and control salt usage, sand usage, and this will be a good way to do it. The upfit from a bare cabin chassis is probably going to be in the area of about $1,500. If you were to try to retrofit an existing cabin chassis, you'd probably be up around $3,500 or $4,000 because you'd have to undo a lot of stuff that's already been done. So if we want to try this, now is the cheapest time to be doing it.
Are you recommending that we do this, Mark?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of time before it's probably not going to be a choice anymore. It's going to be a mandate.
Very
so
good.
I think we need to get a leg up on it.
Okay. Questions, comments, concerns from select board members?
I have a comment that I agree with the idea of doing this now at this time. Also, I like the idea of the extra research Mark did to find the alternative unit, being it uses all standard off-the-shelf parts and doesn't require proprietary software. I know we've talked a lot about conductivity in the lake, and this is a way to make sure that we control what we're spreading in and around the lakes and the side roads that run alongside the lakes.
Okay, very good. Select person Air?
Is Andy gonna make a motion?
I was gonna ask if we're done with comments, would anyone like to make a motion to consider authorizing the additional $2,000 from the Highway Heavy Equipment Reserve account?
I'll make that motion.
I'll
And a
second.
second, okay. And any other questions, concerns, or comments before we go to roll call vote?
Just to make sure the board's clear that brings the total requested from the Highway Heavy Equipment Capital Reserve account to $154,645.
Very good.
Yep.
So we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote beginning with select person Air, please.
Air aye.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Sakosha, aye.
And Hardikoff, aye. Motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Sale of town-owned land is next. I know that, did I see Brian Lindsay on here?
Yes.
Okay. Is that
Is
who
that
you'd like to
down?
present, TA MacGyver?
Yes, absolutely. His group, the Town Lands Committee, he's the chair of the Town Lands Committee, worked very hard to develop a recommendation for the select board. I'm bringing up on the screen right now a summary page that I sent out to the select board, and I also have available the Excel spreadsheet which went out with the report. So if Mr. Lindsay is on and available, I'll turn it over to him, and happy to support in any way possible. So, Brian, if you click the microphone icon on your computer right next to the camera icon, that'll unmute yourself. Yeah, there you go. Oh, there you go. Yep.
Realized I was going to present this, but I can't, I guess.
No, that's okay. So why don't you just be there available for questions because your group did the work if the board does have questions. So big picture, the Town Lands Committee is tasked with advising the select board on the handling of town-owned properties. Part of that objective is what properties to sell, when and why and how, and all those details. So the Lands Committee went through a rather lengthy process, really considering the specifics. The guiding document that they had was this Excel spreadsheet, which is linked in my report, available to the community. It lists the properties that were originally considered. In red are properties which were removed from consideration for various reasons. Provides details like the address, the assessed value, some of the staff notes and some of the committee notes. And then finally at the end is what the recommendation is coming out of the Town Lands Committee. And so I've taken this recommendation, this green area, and condensed it to this report for the board in summary format. And so a lot of these lots are land-only lots, small parcels, which in the Lands Committee recommendation is that it's really in the town's best interest that these lots not only get sold to an abutter, but get a lot line adjustment performed on them so they become a larger parcel. And so this first category, the Lands Committee is recommending that their team go directly to abutters of these properties and ask them if they're interested in purchasing it. So the town is allowed to take this approach to dispatching property through RSA 4114A. So this would be different than a bid process, different than an auction process. This would be a, going and asking, negotiating with property owners directly that are abutters if they're interested in these properties. In the grand scheme of things, the amount of back taxes owed on these properties is rather minimal across the board. And so selling off these properties is a lot more about limiting the town's liability, reducing the town's ownership of property than it is about recouping back taxes. And that's why going through this route of contacting abutters, it has been deemed to be in the best interest of the town. So we don't own them. The lots get bigger in those areas. So as a condition listed in the summary, the town would not consider accepting any less than what is owed on the properties in payment. And if the Lands Committee in negotiation, it was determined that an abutting property owner wasn't willing to pay what was owed in back taxes, the Lands Committee would then come to the select board and talk about that property specifically. And it could be that the Lands Committee might consider recommending an additional sale price or a lesser sale price. So that's the first category. The second category are the more valuable properties that the town has that the Lands Committee is recommending that we sell. These properties are recommended to be sold through auction. The town hasn't pursued a real estate auction in this way in recent years. This is, we hire an auctioneer to come in, advertise the properties, handle the sale of the properties. Typically, they're an attorney and they handle the transfer paperwork and everything like that. And so the town still receives the full auction price. The buyer pays anywhere from a 10 to 20% premium at purchase. And so at the end of the day, the town would still receive the same amount of money if we went through a bid process, but this is professionally advertised. They post signs out at the property. Typically, they post it online, their website, newspapers, etc. So this would be an opportunity to attract more attention, get more interest in the properties that we're selling, and make sure that we're able to recoup all the amounts owed to the town. So you'll see a few lots in here listed, and a couple of them, the Lands Committee is recommending that a condition of the sale is that they be sold together and merged and have a lot line adjustment done. And again, this is part of the work that they did to say, hey, look, yes, these are two separate lots now. Yes, we might collect more tax revenue as having them be two separate lots, but it's in the long-term best interest of the town that they be merged. There could be, terrain constraints of the property. One property might not be buildable and the other one might be. Combining them into a larger lot was deemed beneficial. So you'll see that those conditions are listed as well, so that it's clear up front, and that's what would be communicated to the auctioneer when they would be advertised. And finally, there's 2 lots. So if you look at map 113, lot 18 and 19, so a condition of that sale would be that the property is cleaned up within 1 year of purchase. So that would be written into, that language would be written by our attorney, advertised up front, and agreed to when the buyer purchases it. Map 224, lot 60. So this is a property on Castle Rock Road. The Lands Committee recommends that the town sell this. The town's tried to sell it before, and make it perfectly clear that a condition of this sale is that the road be improved prior to a building permit being issued. Now that's the town's policy anyways, but reiterating that up front, the Lands Committee doesn't think the town should continue owning that property and should try to offload it. So the last caveat is if an auction isn't feasible for some reason, most likely due to COVID-19, then the backup plan would be to do the traditional sealed bid process.
Very good, thank you. Questions, comments, concerns by the select board?
I'd like.
This is Brian.
Thank you for taking some of my.
I'm sorry, hang on, Brian. Go ahead, select person Bailey.
Thank you. I would like to say I'm very glad some of my concerns were taken care of, especially to Brian for putting some of these properties together, merging when they're being sold, and especially the one there on the other drive, which I'm not going to mention, but thank you.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, my question, Connor, is on RSA 4114A. Would that allow the in dealing with them first would be if there was an association would be.
Can we go back?
Brian,
Yeah,
Brian, you're breaking up. Can anybody else hear him?
No, it's not bad.
Here, Brian, you'll be getting a phone call on your cell phone from the meeting. Answer that. It'll be a 664-220 number. Just answer that and we'll get your audio through the phone. Just give me 1 second. So if we had any questions from the select board, we could probably consider those while I pull this up, Tracy.
Yeah, any questions for Brian from the select board? Select person there.
They do a very outstanding job. There's a bunch of knowledge.
Can you hear me now?
Very thrilled to have them. In my
Right,
opinion.
yes, we can hear you now, Brian. Thank you, select person Air. Go ahead, Brian.
My question is, if you can hear me, my question is with the RSA 4114A, would
I lost him again.
that to give them a chance to give a
Brian,
association a chance to do the artists.
Brian, I'm sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you, but something's still not working. Your audio is going in and out and in and out, even with the phone call.
You should be getting a phone call on your cell phone, Brian. Pick that up.
6.
Yeah, hold on.
He must be in North Barrington.
I don't know, but I think it's important we hear what he has to share.
Oh, no, for sure.
Can you
Yep, go ahead, Brian.
hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
My question is, could we treat a
an association, the same as
Yes.
as an abutter with some of those things, because there are we got 2 or 3 situations where I think the association would be interested in giving us a chance to, or giving us a chance to talk to them.
Absolutely. And I think what my recommendation is to the select board is to give the lands committee the authorization to go and approach the person or group that they feel that it's in the town's best interest to acquire the properties. That might be in a butter, that might be offering it to both abutters, that might just be offering it to one abutter. You know, one of these lots has a driveway easement across it. The 0.1 acre lot is split in half perfectly by the driveway of the lot next door.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, that property should really be offered to the person that owns that house. So the lots can be cleaned up, the easements can be cleaned up. And so, yes, Brian, what I think we're looking for from the board is to give your group authorization to pursue anybody that's in the best interest of the town.
As
Understand. Thank you.
as I understand it, Connor, what your suggestion is, by appointing the lands committee, the liaison to present those, that it would be for purchase price of total back owed taxes, interest, and penalties.
Correct.
Very good. Okay. Any questions, concerns, comments? Select person Air, I see your hand up.
I always clarify what you just said. Did you say liaisons?
Well, on behalf of the select board, they're functioning as liaisons, presenting what will be an offer for purchase.
I have no problem with that because I am the liaison. I'm just the messenger. So I have full faith in that committee. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns from the select board?
Select person Bailey has his hand up.
Oh, I can't see him. I'm sorry, George. Go ahead.
Sorry, my only question is how much money is owed on these properties? I have the printout in front of me. Maybe I'm not reading it correctly. How do I know what's owed?
Yep, so that's a good question. So we don't have up-to-date back taxes and full penalties owed on all of them. The reason is in the past, we haven't always calculated all of the costs that we can include, and we've improved that situation a number of months ago, and the tax office has been working on updating that information, but then tax bills started coming due, so that's still a work in progress. If you have questions about specific properties, I might have that available. Like I said, that first category, most of the taxes owed are in the hundreds to maybe 1,000 or 2 in back taxes, interest, and penalties. These are small vacant lots without significant value. The properties down below, like the map 113, lot 18 and 19, it's over $100,000 that's owed between those 2 properties. So
we could set a minimum, right?
So for the auction, for the auction part, it would be a minimum, and minimum would be what the town is owed. And so big
Because
picture, just in
anything
case.
over sale of the property and the taxes and whatnot, doesn't that go back to the original owner?
Right. So any excess proceeds, so anything in addition to what's owed to the town goes to the prior owner. Yes.
Okay.
Select person Air.
My question still is that if we were to elect to use the auctioneer would have what the minimum price would be for each lot to sell.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's all I
Select person Air.
First of all, the town is not in the business to make money. And then that rule that if it make more, it has to go back to the owner. But we need to look at the liability. And now, making rid of the liability, now we have future income. So it's doing nothing, they're collecting debt. So it's better get rid of the liability.
I don't think anybody's arguing that.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, TA MacGyver, can you tell us, do you need a vote on this?
Sorry,
Yeah.
Tracy, I was muted. I thought I was unmuted, but I was got
Andy,
muted.
Andy, go ahead.
I went to talking. Somebody turned my microphone off on me, and I didn't realize it. So I have a general comment. My general comment is in the 4+ years I have watched the sale of town property, I have not seen much bring anywhere near what was actually owed for back taxes on it. So I mean, if there's a different approach and it works, that's great, but I'm not getting my hopes up that we will see it bring that. We just get the added value and benefit of getting it back onto the tax roll.
Okay. Very good. I would like to poll the board. If anyone who is on the board may become auction participant, should they recuse themselves?
Not necessarily. I think in the decision, if the board is involved in the decision of awarding a property, specifically through that RSA 4114A process, it would be important. But there's nothing legally preventing a select board member from saying, yes, it's in the town's best interest to offer these properties for sale. A select board member, if they felt uncomfortable, could certainly recuse themselves, but there's nothing in law that requires it.
Very good.
Wouldn't that still be a competitive bid?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I think where there's minimums being set now, as opposed to in the past where any and all bids were accepted, probably this is a much more competitive process, but okay. So would anyone like to make a motion to move forward with the process of approaching the abutters using the Lands Committee as the liaisons and getting a report back from that group?
I'll make a motion to allow the Lands Committee to approach the abutters and see about moving forward or getting an offer from them or seeing if they're interested in bidding on it.
Very good. And I see a second from Select Person Air. So roll call vote, please, beginning with Select Person Air.
Air aye.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Sakosha aye.
And Hardikoff, aye. Thank you all for that.
And I will just share, if I may, Chairperson Hardikoff, one of the properties on North River Lake, which I just closed out of here, sorry, but the may be of interest to the fire department. So the Town Lands Committee will be discussing that property with the fire department as a water access in that part of town. So for your information.
Very good. Okay. And then moving on to the Town of Barrington Services and COVID-19 discussion, I would like to note that based on the CDC website specific to New Hampshire, the Town of Barrington has had 28 cases, the majority of which have resolved themselves. And we are doing, in my opinion, an excellent job as a state keeping the virus as contained as possible. So go ahead, TA MacGyver, on this.
Yep, so no significant update. As the board is aware and the community is aware, we've continued to offer town services from the beginning. We've made adaptations as necessary following state and federal guidance. We've heard really positive feedback from the community and some of the service adjustments we've made. I've heard great things from residents who used to roll the dice, show up at the town clerk's office and hope they didn't have to wait in line. Now they can make an appointment. They can come on their time and be addressed as soon as they arrive. Folks in the building office are thrilled to be able to receive their building permit and go back and forth with the building inspector online. And so I think we've made a lot of improvements that we hope to maintain after COVID-19 has passed or diminished enough that we can return back to normal. But no significant adjustments have been made. The information is still available on our website, and appreciate the community's patience and interest in safety, keeping our employees safe and staying safe themselves.
Very good. Moving on to new business.
There was one other old business, planning board review of class 6 and private road agreement right before COVID-19.
Oh, I'm sorry. Why do we not have? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I skipped right over it. Okay. So recent planning board meeting, there was a request, comment, class 6, feasibility. Can you explain this to us?
Yep. So just at the last select board meeting, Vice Chair Knapp brought up the planning board's request to have materials from department heads ahead of their review. So staff have reviewed it. That's a very possible process change. Most of the reviews come in before the planning board reviews it anyways. So staff's going to work together to make sure that the planning board has that before their meetings. So just wanted to circle back to that process improvement as discussed at the last meeting.
Very good. Is the select board okay with the modification that those recommendations be sent to the planning board before the select board reviews everything?
Yes.
Okay with me.
Okay, I don't think we need a vote on that, do we?
No.
No, very good. Okay, moving on to new business, revenue from state resources.
Okay, so I'll gloss over this. If you want more details, let me know. Happy to answer questions. Basically, we received great news from the state that the 3 primary funding sources that come down that we budget for, plan for, and are integral to our tax rate, the governor has made a commitment not to touch. That's rooms and meals tax, that's the highway block grant, and that's that new state aid to municipalities, $90,000 of new money that started last year. So moving forward, I absolutely anticipate to see a reduction in the highway block grant money. That's a look back from gas tax and commercial vehicle registrations. So we're not experiencing the cut this year because it's looking at last year. Next year, we're going to see a significant cut there for our next budget cycle. And then, so that's what we'll budget for next year. And then the rooms and meals tax, that's not, even though it's supposed to be, that's not tied to actual rooms and meals tax revenue. That's just an arbitrary number that the legislature has set. So as long as the legislature continues to put that same number in the budget as they have for the past 8 years, that won't change, but that could be a source of cut when they look at the next biennium budget. So good news from the state there. Just wanted to keep the board up to date, and we'll continue to follow it. Again, as I've said since early on, I think for our community, the bigger financial impact will be felt next year, not this year. There's a lot of grant funding coming in. There's these revenue that has been secured and very responsible spending by department heads. Next year is going to be the tough one, where we'll see some reduced revenue from our state sources. We'll likely see reduced revenue from the money that we collect at the town level. So it'll be a close thing to watch, and I'll continue to keep the board updated. Any questions?
No, thank you for that update. Province road improvements.
Yep, so I'll turn this over to Mark, give him a chance to unmute himself. So this is Province Road that heads out to Madbury, previously Newt Road, but Province Road is the name, regarding the board's request to consider introducing stone. Mark, ready when you are.
Okay. Once again, at the last meeting, several of you asked me to look into the feasibility and cost of doing full depth reclamation with the introduction of 6 inches of stone on Province Road. Is it feasible? Yep, we can do it. The cost is $1 a square foot, which comes to $61,680. Now, let's back up a minute. Every year, time and material does get spent on that road. This past year, I figure between machine time, I mean, we had 3 different mud seasons this year. A lot of machine time every day and material here and there. We probably got $8 grand into the thing this year, just to try to keep it passable. And this same scenario has gone on for a lot of years, probably every year for a long, long time. So stone has been added every year of its life recently, and where did it go? You can't see it. It's going somewhere, but it's not solving the problem, and you literally, it's like dumping it into a black hole. So this reclamation would basically be doing the same thing. So there's a bunch of things that really bother me about this road. The visible things are that road is pretty much all in direct sunlight all day long, all winter long. So the frost shouldn't be setting into that road as easily as it would one that's, you know, in the woods someplace with no available sunlight. Secondly, that road, yeah, it goes right through a swamp, but it's built up pretty high if you look at it. It's probably at least a couple of feet down to the water. The thing is, it's quite a little peninsula going out through there now. But yet we still get this same problem every year. It seems like no matter what you dump in there for rocks, they're heavy. They're going to the bottom, displacing a bunch of slop at the bottom, pushing the slop up to the top, and then here you go again. It's a vicious cycle. So those are the two things that you can see. Things that you can't see is historical stuff that I've stumbled upon from people that have been around town for a while. You know, a lot of people have told me that there has been everything, including the kitchen sink, dumped into that road to try to shore it up forever. And it just hasn't happened. And other sources, some of the old timers are saying, you know, that's a corduroy road under there, which is basically just a bunch of logs laid side by side all the way through there to try to stay up on top of what's there. So literally between the logs rotting that were put in place years ago and the potential peat bog that this thing is crossing to begin with, there's a real good chance you could be paying $61,000 plus just to end up in the same boat again. I mean, I wish I had a more definitive answer to give you, but I just don't. That's why I would suggest doing some cores to see what we have down there. If it's a bottomless peat bog, then I would say we could be wasting a ton of serious taxpayer money on this thing and still not get to where we want to be. Just my feelings. I can't, with a clear conscience, I cannot 100% wrap my brain around this working 100%. And I like to deal in absolutes. If I'm not absolutely sure about something, at least in my own mind, it might not be so in reality, but at least in my own mind, if I'm not absolutely sure, I just can't back it.
Okay. So it's our understanding that you're looking for a change order that would allow what? Borings on the...
So this would be separate before that change order, before considering that 61,000. Mark would like to come back to the board with the results of a core sample to understand what the base material is before considering moving forward. We wanted to give the board the update that it's going to be 61,000 and look for direction from the board if you want to keep going down this road, knowing that if we do this, pun intended, if we do this, it's going to cost $61,000. Before we do that, spending a couple of $1,000s doing core samples to make sure we know what we're getting ourselves into. So just making sure this is information or a path the board requested. So making sure you still support going down this road and getting core samples to better guide our decision making.
So I'm clear, Mark, I just ordered geotechnical borings on a piece of property that I have a project happening with professionally, and it was $6,250 to bring the equipment out and do the borings. Is that what we're going to expect on this roadway?
I don't know the cost of the actual borings. I have not inquired that yet. Okay. Basically, the number that you're hearing thrown around out here tonight is basically what we've been charged on other borings, other places in town. Probably not as deep as these borings would have to go.
Okay.
So, you could be into it for more than $2,000.
Okay. So you're going to come back with a quote on that?
I will get with the engineering firm and try to come back to you with a number by the next meeting.
Okay, and then we're going to then table this discussion for the 61,000 till the next meeting?
Select person Air?
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Okay, go ahead, select person Air.
I, Daniel Air, when I was younger, ran a road reclaimer. And I did 42 miles, 20 feet wide of reclaiming roads. In Charlestown and Rochester, the old trolley and horse and buggy, the timbers are still there. The wood I ground up, it was like brand new. Dover, Washington Street, same thing. Throughout Mass, old logs of water pipes. So I have full confidence. I've watched and did observation on this road for years, and I don't think the logs will be rotted because they're preserved in the muck. Peat moss under there we don't know about, but for years, the last 3 years, they started putting stone to it. Before that, 3/4 stone base out of rocks. And I love the material, but it's not structural. You can drive through it. It's really a silty product, and it's like a sponge. You don't sink out of sight when you drive through it. There's tire ruts, you're all over the place. Your vehicle moves. And I believe the McAdam will work. And I have faith in a highway crew and in Mark to do test pits themselves. Go around and do random stuff. If they find something within that foot or down below, then we bring the money in there. But I think they're fully qualified to take that backhoe over there and do test pits. And if they find something, bring in engineers.
Mark, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, we can do that. But we have no real way. We're not trained to scientifically analyze anything that we unearth there. And a hole dug with a backhoe, yeah, okay, you can somewhat see what's there, but it's not a segregated sample like what you get with a core. But we can do it.
Select board, do you have questions, comments, concerns in reference to this portion of the discussion?
No.
Mark, do you feel confident that you get the same results from you guys digging compared to the coring?
Oh, like I said, we can't get real technical with it just by the way it's done. I guess if we keep the size of the trench square, we can somewhat get, see what the stratification is going down through to the bottom when we hit the water. But
now, how much money do you think it would cost the highway department to go down there and do that?
Oh, 2 or 3 hours, $500-600.
Mark, would it be appropriate to start with that, and then if there's still a question, go to the borings?
We can, if we see something really bad that we don't like, I guess then we can resort to the borings.
Okay,
But
I mean, you're the expert, so we're just trying to.
I feel like we have to get some kind of data under our belt.
God bless somebody. Okay.
To figure out where this is going to go.
So before us are two things: proceed with the geotechnical borings and get the reports back, or begin with creating a square area with a test pit to dig. And Mark, are you comfortable with starting with that test pit?
Yeah, we can do that.
I really, I mean, this is your area, and I think we'll respect whatever decision you tell us you need to make.
It's a good place to start.
Oh, okay. So is the board okay with that? We'll wait for a report back on the material.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mark, very much.
Okay.
Do we
And
want to
we'll-
talk about the agenda item about the 61,000 if everything passes?
Right, we're gonna table that until the next meeting. Joint Recreation Commission meeting is up next.
Nope, you skipped select board virtual in-person hybrid meeting.
Oh, sorry, that's because I drew a big circle around it because I wanted to talk about it. Go ahead, T.A. McIver.
So as the board requested at the last meeting, I did my research to figure out what is allowable in the current state of affairs regarding in-person meetings. I outlined it in my report, kind of the big picture items. The summary is we can start meeting in person. We can use the ECLC to meet and socially distance. My personal recommendation is that we make sure that we can retain a hybrid functionality so that if a board member or members of the community still wish to participate virtually, we have that option open to them. I'm not confident right now that we have the technology to do that. I'm working with our IT services provider to develop some recommendations, good microphone and video equipment. You'll remember that first meeting we did where it was hybrid. We had audio problems, we had video problems, and it was very difficult to conduct the meeting. We've kind of been putting off buying the technology that we need to conduct good meetings for the new town hall. This is an opportunity for us to buy some of that equipment with grant money that's available through that CARES Act Municipal Relief Fund, and then buy the equipment that we'll end up using in the town hall. So I have our IT services provider looking into that. It's not ready yet, and my only request is that if the board was anxious to get back to in-person meetings, we at least waited until we were able to conduct a meeting, a hybrid meeting, having virtual participation successfully. And I'm working on getting that done as soon as possible, but we're not there yet. As far as virtual meetings, the governor's made it clear that the executive order that's allowing virtual meetings exclusively is continuing for the entire state of emergency. So there's no fear of that disappearing anytime soon. So happy to answer questions, but the chair and I discussed this and wanted to get a feeling from the board before we developed a plan moving forward.
So I'm going to speak, and then whoever would like to speak, please just let me know. My only concern with continuing with a hybrid model is, back on our April 12th or 13th meeting, there was an attendee that wanted to speak, and try as we might, we held it for 30 seconds. We requested a chat message. We requested the hand wave on the virtual screen, and we paused and even read the person's comments online. And unfortunately, this person went online and I'll just quote, but we attempted to speak at the select board meeting and we were not provided the opportunity. And the person was very angry and felt that they were not given the public comment portion of the meeting to speak. And that person never went back and corrected their posting, even after it was very, very clear, based on the meeting and the virtual review of the meeting, that we had done everything possible to try and help that person participate. So I just want to be mindful that if we go to this hybrid model, we've got to be monitoring it and figuring out ways like you just did with Brian Lindsay, where there can be participation at all levels, because quite frankly, we do everything we can to be sure that there's transparency and that our residents can participate. And the fact that that comment was posted and never corrected did not sit well with me, because I know it's been important to all of us that we have a very participative process. So that's my comment in reference to the hybrid. Does any of the other go ahead, select person Sakosha.
I think until we have something solid that's definitely figured out, I think things should keep rolling the way they are. We had, I think I saw over 23 people chime in today.
27 at one point, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that worked quite well.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Select person Air.
I, Daniel Air, am computer illiterate, and I like hands-on my whole life, and then that's why I like having the paperwork in front of me and stuff, and hands-on. I like the meetings in person, and then that's why I'm not doing electronic signatures as I need to do for deeds. So
we're talking about signatures. It's just the meeting, though.
I know. I'm talking about too, about being computer illiterate in the old ways. So as soon as we can get back on track, I would like it.
I understand that's your preferred method. With the hybrid, there would be both the in-person and the ability to participate. And I can see that there's value to that as long as we're doing it well. So, any other questions, comments, concerns from the select board, Vice Chair Knapp?
The only thing I was going to say is that I echo your comments on it. I completely agree about the comment about correcting the online comment, and I also, and that we did everything we could to give people a voice. I do have a hybrid model, and the quicker we could get to that, I think the better off it would be for everyone.
Okay, Select Person Bailey?
Yes, thank you. I kind of being one way with this because it'd be beneficial for me to maintain the way we are. But I do think that with your comments, I have to agree with yours, Mr. Knapp, about the fact that we do have to open it. So whatever the board decides to do, I will go along.
Okay, very good. I think for at least the next couple of meetings, Connor, as you're working through equipment until we've tested this and know that we have a good model for the hybrid, we probably should continue virtually.
I agree.
Okay.
And I'll continue to keep the board updated. And like I said, my goal at the end of this, after it's perfectly appropriate to meet in person and have a room full of people again, my goal would be to retain this virtual component for anybody that's interested in participating. We've had anywhere between 15 and 30 participants in select board meetings ever since we've been meeting virtually. And as you all know, we hardly ever have 15 or 30 people in the room for a select board meeting. So I think this is another step of transparency. And I think having the ability for folks to participate real time from the comfort of their own home, or if they're traveling and still have access to that democratic process is important. So I want to get it right. I want to do it so it lasts and make this available for the residents of Barrington in perpetuity. So appreciate the board's support. I'll continue working on it, keeping you updated. We'll plan to do all virtual meetings, at least for the 2 meetings in July, and we'll start looking at August if we can get the tech pieces in place.
Excellent. Okay. So our next issue up, joint rec commission meeting.
Yeah, so as you know, every year, typically before this time, but we hold a joint meeting with Recreation and Conservation Commission separately to reevaluate the Memorandum of Understanding and the Memorandum of Agreement. And so this year it's been put off because we were trying to wait until we could meet in person. With the Recreation Department, there's a few topics that the board would really benefit from meeting together. And so we wanted to get that on the books. And so this is just here to let you know that we've scheduled a joint meeting for that July 27th meeting. So plan ahead. A part of that meeting will be dedicated to having a joint conversation with the Recreation Commission. So the topics of right now of that joint meeting are going to be the addition project that they're working on, the satisfying the code concerns of the firewall. They'll have some updates for that, talking about the programming throughout the process, and then additionally a review of the Memorandum of Understanding. So the board is invited to suggest any other topics they'd like to discuss with the Rec Commission. I'd like to get that agenda set and over to the Commission for their review. Additionally, I've attached the Memorandum of Understanding to my report, and I've asked that if any board members have adjustments that they'd like to see to that Memorandum of Understanding, you get that in ahead of the July 13th meeting. At that July 13th meeting, I'll compile all of the feedback from board members into a proposed Memorandum of Understanding adjustments. That way we can get that proposal to the Rec Commission a couple of weeks in advance of that July 27th meeting, so they have it ahead of time, can review it, have a chance to meet and discuss it before. So this is really just a planning agenda item, but if you had anything you wanted to add right now, we could. I've already heard from a couple of board members regarding Memorandum of Understanding adjustments, so keep those coming, and I'll have an updated draft at the July 13th meeting.
Excellent. What time does the meeting start?
6:30.
6:30. Thank you.
So it'll be a regularly scheduled select board meeting. This will be the first agenda item under appointments.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
What was that?
That was July 15th, correct?
Nope, July 27th. July 27th, 6:30.
All right, I thought I had read. Thank you.
Okay, and then recreation programming update.
Okay, so I believe Jesse Tennis is on the call. And just a couple of quick updates regarding recreation programming, primarily for the community, but also for the board. And if you had questions about these programming updates, she'll be available to answer them. You there, Jesse?
Yep.
You
Can
may
you
have to, you got,
Perfect.
we can hear you, yep.
Perfect. Sorry, there's a little bit of a lag. So it's really kind of covered in the report, but I just wanted to keep you guys up to date that we had made the difficult decision about summer camp. The response from the community was very supportive, and just based off of the guidelines, they definitely understood some of the perimeters that we were working within. That being said, we are working diligently on trying to offer some sort of programming and opportunities for the community. We have been working with Primex just to kind of determine the overall suggestion in regards to the playground. They actually provided us with some signs for us to put down by the playground. So it is a use at your own risk. It is not sanitized by any means. And we have actually noticed quite a few people utilizing that space. So I just want to make sure that people know that that is up and running. The next thing we're looking at is working with the school to offer some sort of it's a summer soccer program. It's going to be a little bit different than it typically is. However, we are looking at doing some sort of summer soccer program, but also meeting those guidelines. So just note that we are trying to get, somewhat up and running with these COVID guidelines. Some programs feasible, some programs not. So.
Very good.
And I just want to point out that Jessie, this is her first year, really just her first few months as recreation director, has taken on a number of huge decisions for the department, and she's been doing an awesome job. A tenet of her decision making is what's in the best interest of Barrington and the community, and I really respect that. She's doing right by the town, and it's a heck of a first year to be a recreation director, but she's doing an awesome job, and she's got a lot of support from the rec community, both in town and across the state. So it's a tough year to be a first year recreation director, but she's doing an awesome job at it.
Thank you, Connor. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse. The next thing coming up is our COVID-19 travel policy. And given that we've just discussed the rec department and we're moving on to this COVID-19 here, just a reminder, everybody, the 3 things you can do: wear a mask, wash your hands, keep your distance of 6 feet or more from anyone around you that's not part of your primary living group.
Absolutely.
Okay, Connor, you're on.
Yep. So this is, going to be a temporary travel policy that we're asking the board to support in order to have something as part of our personnel plan that handles personnel travel during the pandemic and best practices among that. So the first page that you have in your materials is this New Hampshire Division of Public Health Services from the Bureau of Infectious Disease Control, which talks about employee travel screenings and the exclusion guidance. And so this was part of the basis for the policy, also working with policies other communities have developed. So the premise is, listen, obviously the town is doing its part by not sending folks away from travel in Massachusetts or in New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont on official business, but employees are still able to travel as they see fit. But a communication to employees that if they do choose to travel on their own leisure time and travel to an area of community spread on an airplane, on a bus, those risk factors identified in other public health documents, that they're going to be subject to that 14-day quarantine period. And unless that 2-week, that 14-day quarantine period is otherwise subject to the paid leave under Family First Coronavirus Response Act, then that will be unpaid leave. And the next item, the last item, that alternative to self-quarantine is that if they'd like to get tested and bring back test results showing that they're testing negative, that the town, that will be acceptable to waive that 14-day quarantine period. and that the town would pay for that test to get them back to work after their leisure time away.
So as I'm understanding this, just maybe other people need this clarification as well. If an employee still chooses to travel, they certainly can do that at their own discretion. But when they return from that travel by public means, bus, train, plane, outside of any of the three states listed, New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont, then in fact, they would be going 14 days into an unpaid quarantine and not having to use any of their paid time off?
No, so they would be using their paid time off. It'd be unpaid from the town. They would be able to use their used earned time. So the the last sentence of that first paragraph in personal travel, the quarantine period would be unpaid unless you choose to use your accrued earned time or your situation qualifies for paid leave under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act.
So I'm of the mindset that if someone chooses to travel outside of the three states using public transportation, that while I respectfully understand why the 14-day quarantine or the test, while they're either waiting the 2 to 3 days for the test result or they're quarantining for 14 days, I would suggest as an employer, we insist they use their paid time off.
Okay.
I
An
don't
employee
think
must
it's
use all
fair.
available accrued earned time.
I think from an employer's perspective, it's relatively unfair to expect an employee to take 2 weeks off, choose not to use paid time off, and then still have the time for either cash out or to use in the future. Does anyone else on the select board have a comment in reference to that?
I don't think we should be paying for the test.
I agree.
The tests are either covered by insurance or free from the state right now.
Right.
So
Well,
that's the
he had mentioned
payment
that-
for the test is a
that
moot
the town
issue.
would
Yeah,
cover the
but
test. And I
in
don't
my
wanna get
mind,
that.
staying home for 14 days, allowing your PTO to remain in your bank. I mean, I get it. Some people may, maybe your twin brother's getting married and you have to travel, but returning and having the 2 to 3 day waiting period for the test to come back negative, if it is a normal work day, I feel that the employee should have to use paid time off. Go ahead, Select Person Bailey.
Thank you very much. I also agree with you, but there's also the possibility somebody might be pulling a pull over somebody's eyes. I just want to ensure that the TA would find ample evidence that the individual did travel, so that the other 14 days would be just a place to use up some more time. But I think they should use their own time if they select to do it, because they'll know ahead of time.
Okay, so I've made an adjustment, if this is an amendment you'd like to make. So in that last paragraph, or the last sentence of the first paragraph, the quarantine period would be unpaid and you must use all available and unused accrued earned time, or your situation, grammar's messed up there. But that sentence, and I'll fix the grammar, that adjustment that you must use all available and unused accrued earned time. Is that what you were looking for, Chairperson Hardikoff?
I think that's appropriate. When would a situation qualify for paid leave under the Families First?
If it was my understanding, if they were caring for somebody that had the coronavirus, caring for a family member, if they themselves had coronavirus, and it's important to note that anything that does qualify under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, that's all reimbursable through that CARES Act Municipal Relief Fund. So that even if a situation did qualify, the town would be reimbursed for those expenses.
Okay, so it's my understanding then, should they test positive, we would not require that they use their PTO, correct?
No, federal law requires that we pay them. If they test positive, we're required to pay them their full rate for the first 2 weeks and then a period of time after that. If they're caring for somebody, federal law requires that we pay them 66% of their wages.
And this is all because an employee can make their own choice to travel on public transportation out of these three states?
Yes.
That's very interesting. Okay.
Wow.
Trust me, I'd love to get into a conversation about the expansion of FMLA and the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. I would be beating my chest a lot louder if the federal government didn't follow it up with funding.
Okay.
And that's exactly what they did.
The only other thing I'm going to ask you is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act running concurrent with FMLA, or is the time off for the COVID in addition to the amount of time they're allowed to take under FMLA?
So the adjustments to FMLA, my understanding of the adjustments to FMLA are not with the timeline, are there with the funding. So as you know, FMLA doesn't require funding. So the
time would run concurrent. They would take the time off for COVID and still be tracking usage of FMLA and reducing those available hours. Well, that's something for the employer, I guess. That's interesting. And again, this is, the recommendations are, for goodness sakes, there's 29 states that are increasing their COVID. Well, we're reducing the numbers in our areas in the state of New Hampshire. If we sit tight for a while, we're gonna stay safe, which is good. But certainly we can't tell employees what to do. Okay, right. Thank you.
So I guess I would be looking, if you're comfortable with that adjustment, that you must use all available earned time, be looking for approval with that amendment. And I'll be bringing this back to the board. Well, it's no longer relevant to remove it off of our policy docket. But in the meantime, to make sure that we're covered with the decisions we're making as an employer.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns, or comments before I make a motion to approve?
No.
Okay. Motion to approve the COVID-19 travel policy with an addendum to the bottom of the paragraph under personal time, that the 14-day quarantine period or 2 to 3 day waiting period, paid time off will be used.
Second it.
Thank you. Roll call vote beginning with Select Person Air.
Air, aye.
Select Person Bailey, you have to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yes, I did. Thank you. Bailey, aye. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Nap aye.
Kosh aye.
Hardikoff, aye. Thank you. Next on the agenda is reports, but did we talk about June anniversaries yet?
We talked about that at the last meeting. Happy to read through it again if you'd like me to.
No, that I just always like to be sure that we are recognizing our long-term employees, so I'm glad that we've covered that. So I always skip Vice Chair Knapp, so nobody let me do this time. Report out, please, on your committees, starting with Select Person Sakosha, because his name's on the list first.
Oh, boy. I'm so special. The rec department is working hard on their projects. There was a couple code issues that came up, and they're actually going back to the FPE, fire protection engineer, and they're gathering their materials, and we'll hear more from them on the next meeting.
Excellent. And the playground's open, folks. Wash your hands when you get off the playground, please. Okay. Select Person Air, report out, please.
I attended the conservation last week, and I have a memo I need to read.
Go ahead, Dan.
Is the memo from the actual commission, or?
Yes. And then there's forwarded T.A. McGriver, but I can, at the meeting with the last name conservation, heard about a plan to conserve land owned by Karen Gould. It consists of tax map 26, lot 31, comprised of 131 acres on Hall Road and France Road and Holiday Lake Shores Drive. So, with the help of Mark West from West Environmental, Mrs. Gould has successfully passed the pre-application process for funding for New Hampshire DES Aqua Resource Mitigation program. She now wishes to make a full application to provide individuals are not eligible to apply to this funding. The conservation organization and government entities can. She approached the Southeast Land Trust of New Hampshire, that's about being the applicant. At the present time, they are overwhelmed with other projects and cannot be the applicant for the Gould project at this time. Thus, she asked the town to assist her in being the applicant for this grant. The town has successfully applied for armed grants before. The A.H. Howland Ice Glass Reserve, which protected a part of the money from the only thing that Mrs. Gould is asking for at this time is the town to be applicant. She is not asking for any funding from the town. There will be a small amount of staff time involved in the reviewing the application, but the bulk of the work will be done by Mrs. Gould, Mr. West, and the commission. Possible, Mrs. Gould will ask the town to hold a conservation easement on their protected property. Southeast Land Trust will be the first choice, but at this point, it's not clear whether they will be able to fulfill the role. If so, they will represent a long-term commitment by the town monitor and enforce the easement. But at the present, Barrington holds over 200 conservation easements and able to perform this duty regarding the use of volunteer labor. The Conservation Commission unanimously endorses the project and encourages the select board to approve now being the applicant for the armed funding. Thank you for your consideration on this matter. And in the minutes,
Yep.
I made it, I feel I could speak for the selectmen. Mrs. Gould is asking for no public access. And I said, I think I can speak for the selectmen. The selectmen would want public access and parking. So, and it is due by the end of the month. So she's scheduled to come in and talk on the 13th through Connor. But I just want to give you guys a heads up. So it's what you want to do. They don't put it in before the 13th.
So as I'm understanding, select person Air, the individual would like to conserve the land. She'd like the town to be, instead of Southeast Land Trust, who doesn't feel they can take on the project, the town would be the group that she's conserving the land with, but she doesn't want public access to the water if the land is...
The land, the whole property.
So, okay, understood. Very good. Any questions, comments, or concerns that we need to address before that meeting? Go ahead, select person Bailey.
Yes, thank you very much. My concern is as Dan has spoken to, is that they're going to restrict the use of public using. And in the past, our easements have allowed for trails, allowed for snowmobile use, hunting, fishing. It's available to it. And what's going on was that it's just going to be completely isolated down to it. So, and then the other aspect I have on that piece of property is easement monitoring. And I remember in the past, we had a budget line item for the Conservation Commission to receive money to do the easement monitoring. And I like to know, is that still there or not? And so, and then I'd like to know who signed the memo from the Conservation Commission.
Okay. Did you get all that, Connor? It was a little broken up, but I think what George is asking is who signed the memo? I think, are you asking whether CELT signed it? Or...
No, what member of the Conservation Commission sent that memo to
It was signed by the Conservation Commission. John Wallace is the member of the Conservation Commission that drafted it on behalf of the Conservation Commission.
And I asked them.
That was what I was looking for. Thank you, TA.
Go
ahead. Is on the budget, do they still have a line item for easement monitor?
Yes.
And who collects that money?
So as it was indicated in the letter, a lot of that easement monitoring is conducted by volunteers. In the past, there has been payments to John Wallace for monitoring the easements But my understanding is most of it's done by volunteers.
Okay.
Can we look into that, please, as to the payments that were made in it already? And then again, TA, I am against not having public access to this property. We're gonna take care of that and give her an easement and a tax break on it. I think that we should get what is due to the people that we represent.
Okay. Select person
Madam
Air,
Chair?
go ahead. Go ahead, select person Air.
I asked for this letter with the board. I asked the board, I said I can speed up the process by introducing here, but I want the letter. So I asked for this letter. So you had a clear understanding of what happened. And then we did have a meeting with Town Lands that formed that Excel sheet through Connor.
Very good. Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Yes, I have a general comment that
Go ahead, Vice Chair now.
I know several folks kind of made reference to it at some point in their comments, but I absolutely do not agree with us putting resources into conserving land that is not open for the residents of Barrington to use. So public access to it and use of it is absolutely imperative for us, part of that conservation. CELT even makes it open for public, so why would we not?
Okay, so before we proceed even with the meeting on this, is that the consensus of the board that conserved property would be open for usage by residents?
Mine.
Yes.
Select person Air, you agree with that?
Yes.
Select
agree.
person Sakosha, okay, and I'm also in agreement on that.
Perfect. I will communicate that to Karen Gould and the Conservation Commission. And if Karen Gould is still interested in discussing the conservation of this property with the board, I'll program that for the July 13th meeting.
Excellent, thank you. Select person Air, do you have any other school board meeting or anything like that you needed to report out on?
No, I just been following, I haven't attended it yet.
Okay. Select person Bailey, do you have a report out?
I do. Please, thank you very much. I attended the library trustees meeting, and I must say it was a very informative meeting, and a decision has not been made. They're still talking about it. But on the brighter side, the library had 24 new patrons show up. They had 3,107 items checked out, and received 3,086 of the overdue books back. It was some of the books that was held up because they have a place to put them. I'm not exactly sure on it. That was it. And so the library, the library is working very hard to get things ready to go and open that. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just, that's what's going on. They're doing under the circumstances, doing one bang at a job. The other one is for the zoning board. There was 3 items to consider. 2 of the applications were approved, was continued, but it's going to come back to it. And also, the TA, everybody aware before that Marie Schmaltz is going to leave sometime in August, and that was to be considered for that full-time position when the time comes.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Knapp.
Hello. So the planning board met 2 weeks ago, or I'm sorry, on the requested application for waivers for Barrington Shores Campground to build within a 50-foot setback as opposed to a 100-foot setback. There was a lot of impact, or a lot of dialogue and conversation from the residents around the campground, and the planning board heard them and understood what they were asking, and denied that waiver at this point in time. One of the big hiccups in that was that we didn't have a release from the Barrington Water Commission over there stating that there was sufficient water to support the additional sites. So that was it. And then there's a technology committee meeting tomorrow.
Very good. Thank you. Chairperson Hardikoff has nothing to report because we have not had our next transfer station meeting, but when we do, we'll be previewing a recycling flyer that should simplify some of the questions and answers for our residents that use recycling as an option to reduce waste. And again, on July 4th, the town transfer station will be closed. So please plan. We've kept it open for additional hours the prior Thursday, July 2nd. Please plan your trash drop off accordingly. Thank you. The next portion of our meeting is a public comment section, and it is 15 minutes long, 3 minutes per speaker or resident. And if you would like to speak, please, you can mouse over your screen and you'll find a little hand that you just raise your hand. You can use the chat feature in the upper left-hand corner of this software. Or if you desperately need to, you can send an email to administration@barrington.newhampshire.gov. And if that doesn't work, I'm not really sure. Is there any other options? T.A. MacGyver, or have I covered them all?
That
No.
covers them. So I have 4 requests so far. Chief Paul Mosteller, Dan Ayer, and Aaron Paradise.
Very good. So why don't we start with alphabetical order by last name? Go ahead, Dan Ayer is a resident. You have 3 minutes.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to
you.
Oh, Andy, Saturday's my birthday. I'll be 50, so you can pay me back then.
Ah, I love it. Okay.
You guys make 28 look good.
That's nice, Dan. Happy birthday, Vice Chair Knapp. Who's up next alphabetically?
Are you asking me?
Yes, T.A. MacGyver. Who's up
I would
next?
say Paul Mosteller is the next alphabetical last name for public comment.
Thank you. Go ahead, Paul. 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I got a question back on Karen Gould. I'm kind of against you guys. She's asking for no town help. It's conservation land. Typically, conservation is about no impact, okay? Back in 2014, Karen had thought about developing that land, more or less kind of a cluster green subdivision. And I think if you push her, here again, I don't know Karen, but if you go down the road and want access to water, that's going to go against what her beliefs are, and she could turn and develop that land. So my opinion is if she wants to put that in conservation with no impact and no public use, I'd follow her wishes. That's what she wants to do. That's just my opinion.
Thank
you,
Paul.
Next question. COVID-19, why don't you have a sunset clause to follow what the state guidelines are? Something to close the loop on that requirement that you're going to require a 14-day quarantine if somebody goes outside those states. Why don't you put something in your agreement about following state guidelines?
So one of the issues involved with the state guidelines is that they may or may not be more fluid than we would like them to be. That's one issue. The other issue with it is we're not saying people have to stay out for the 14 days. Immediately upon returning, they could go for COVID testing. Some of the results come in as early as 2 hours, depending upon your testing areas, and most of them are 2 to 3 days. So for instance, if in fact I planned a trip to see my twin brother's wedding in Florida, and I return on a Friday, I could immediately get off the plane, train, or what was the other? Bus. And I could go to a convenience MD, have my nose swabbed, and literally have to take 1 day of PTO on Monday before I get the results that I am not carrying COVID.
Well,
So
the reason I'm saying a sunset clause, some kind of closure we going to do this for 3 years? I mean, here again, you're going to have to revisit this at another time.
No, if you recall, in the course of the discussion, T.A. MacGyver made it very clear he'd be coming back and removing this from our policy manual as soon as we, hopefully, fingers crossed, become COVID clear. And I have eaten up about 30 to 40 seconds of your time, so go ahead, Paul.
Okay, and then next question. If you can see in the meeting chat, I put vibe.us. It's a virtual whiteboard program. If you want to do your hybrid select board, that might be a good option. Maybe Andy can take that to the technology committee. And then last question, the gravel pit behind Liberty Truck, Hard Rock, Ledge, or whatever they're called, yearly they're supposed to provide a assessment of the lot. Have they done that in the last year? It's in the agreement.
So the answer is yes to that, and you have used up your time. And just so, Paul, you know how special you are, we typically don't answer questions. Public comment is actually for comment. So
okay, I'm good. Thanks.
That's okay. Who's next?
Carol Riley.
Carol, go ahead. Is she unmuted?
Press *6 if you're participating on a telephone to unmute yourself.
Hello. Good
Hi,
evening,
Carol.
board members.
Go ahead.
This is Carol Riley, Reilly, 59 River Road. I was calling in regards to the tax deeded properties you were discussing previously. And I just wanted to go on record that we directly abut the property at map 126, lot 18, and we would have some interest in that property. We've actually had been contacting Clerk McNeil prior to retirement, annually expressing our interest in that property. And quickly on another note, in regards to the property map 126, lot 29, if someone would like to contact me, I have some information with regards to that property that would prevent it from being developed. And I will leave that up to the board members.
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Person,
Thank you. Wait, we're going to finish our public comment and then go back, select person air. Who's next?
Richard Walker.
Go ahead, Chief Walker.
Just real quick, two things. I don't support using town resources in any way, shape, or form if we're going to restrict access. We've done this on a few properties, and we shouldn't be using taxpayer resources if taxpayers can't benefit. So that's my opinion on that. And the other thing I just wanted to bring you up to speed real quick. It appears that somewhere around the third week of July, the tanker will be headed down to Connecticut to have the body removed and start preparing for the new chassis. The older cabin chassis will make its way back to Barrington somewhere, I would assume around the 1st of August. And if everything goes according to the current plan, the company still says once they receive the Freightliner chassis, it'll be about 90 days. So it still looks like with a little bit of luck, we're late October, early November, assuming that the chassis stays on the timeline that we were last updated on.
Very good. Thank you. Any other public comments?
Donald Coker.
Donald, you're on.
Yes, thank you. And I just wanted to say, Madam Chair, for the record, Chief Joy and Connor McIver have been a great deal of help in this. And I think it was Churchill that said, democracy is the worst possible form of government except for all the others. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you, Don. I think, are there any other, I have select person air who would like to make public comment. Is that the last person?
Yes.
I'm not referring to anything, but what was heard, we are blessed. We have a very good group of people on town lands, and they have addressed all areas and people. They took a look at the list, they did their homework, and now since they have the permission, they will be contacting people.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, I think before we adjourn, there are potentially two issues for non-public for personnel, reputation and legal.
Yes.
Okay, so motion to move to non-public made by Chairperson Hardikoff. Oh, and seconded by Select Person Bailey.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, and could I have a roll call vote to enter non-public at 8:38 for purposes of personnel, reputation, and legal?
Air I.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Jim?
Sakosha, aye.
And Hardikoff, aye. Thank you all very much. We'll be coming out of non-public when we're done and reporting out at that time.
Are we gonna get another address?
It should
We
be at the
have-
top of your email.
Already got it.
Thank you very much.
Yep, TA MacGyver has sent you your link. Thank you all for attending.
Just you and I.
Come on, crew.
The meeting recording's still on.
Okay.
You did a great job working through those petitions. It was very efficient, very professional. I think it was good that everybody knew the ground rules up front, and we stuck to them. Platform worked great. Everybody that wanted to speak could.
Yes, that
we
was
even
excellent.
threw on the messaging. So that was awesome.
Jim, I've seen two
I'm
rooms
here.
in your house now, your office and your living room. You're just moving in and amongst things.
Well, no, my
Okay.
charger's buried underneath a bunch of paperwork, so yeah, I had to come in and plug it in. So
Okay, we got George, we got Jim, we've got myself.
My
There's three of
video's
us.
not working. I don't know why.
Okay.
Well, we have a quorum.
Okay. So,
We're
and I
in there.
think the other select person, are we calling him? Are we doing any? Okay.
I sent him the invite, but we have a quorum. We can close out the meeting.
Okay, so at 9:32, we exited non-public. We're back into a public meeting. I would like to make a motion at this time to expand the FTE of the municipal office administrator effective 7/1 of 2020 to a full-time role.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second roll call vote, beginning with select person Air.
I just came on. I'll vote present.
Okay,
Bailey, aye.
Sakosha.
and Hardikoff, aye. Motion passes. At this time, I don't think we have anything else for the public meeting, do we?
No.
No, so I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will
Second.
second it.
Second it. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Hand raised.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks,
We'll
guys.
see you
Have
all
a
soon.
good night, everybody.
Good night.